But we need to do this in a manner that preserves the dignity of Sahabah, in a manner that puts in balance and perspective the profile of all those Sahabah, which has not been done in this case here. So, again, when we look at it with a more clear eye, with a more critical eye, then it's much deeper than what meets the eye. You repeatedly, you show in verses and you show in hadith, Bukhari, Muslim, and then you get this notion that it's all Islamically quoted and Islamically favored, only to know that after the hadith, the interpretation of the hadith and the application of the hadith is totally distorted.
Now, Yusuf Abid Sab, again, this is coming in many of the SMSs, many of the emails. There seems to be an entire episode that is dedicated to discussion revolving around the 12 Imams and around the aspect of Shiism. This is obviously another major point of concern with regards to the arrivals.
See, Maulana, again, just as Maulana had so eloquently now shed light on the authority and the structure of the Ashab of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The moment we insert into the discussion, as they have suggested as the way forward, and what's disturbing about that particular aspect there when they speak about the 12 Imams, they try and very subtly make mention that, listen, irrespective of what you are, whether you are an adherent to that particular belief or not, as long as you are Muslim, it's fine. And that's where the danger lies, because inadvertently what is going to happen, if people start subscribing to that belief, then inadvertently and most definitely, the third criterion of our deen, and that is the Sahaba of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, their relevance in Islam now is again subject to opinion and subject to disparaging remarks, as is evident in this particular series here. So we are saying, in my humble opinion, and perhaps Maulana Sulaiman and Maulana Bham can give us more guidance, that we should follow what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had advised us. Because they're quoting that hadith about the family of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam also told us, "Alaykum bi sunnati," and we do not find in the series here much emphasis on the Sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then the Sunnah of the Khulafa, we do not find any reference to that. So I would say that the originators of this program should have inserted the importance of adherence to Quran and Sunnah, and the best examples, the students of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, if they were genuinely sincere in their quest to conscientize the people about Dajjal and about all these other fitnas that are prevalent in the world today.
Whilst it's not our place to judge, Maulana, but would you say that it's very likely that this whole arrival series is perhaps a conspiracy in itself? That perhaps there's some ulterior motive here that put it across in a way that will captivate Muslims and perhaps non-Muslims as well, but then your subtle message, which is your objective at the end of the day, gets through and people don't even know what hit them.
That's why I was so impressed with the answer from one of our students in school, who watched it. And her comment was exactly this. That what happens is you get so caught up, and it's done so convincingly, albeit with cut and paste and selective information, that you start looking forward to what's the next sensational thing. And then this aspect is introduced so subtly. And if one is not well versed, or perhaps if one is not even aware about this different dimension, a breakaway dimension from Islam, called whatever they want to call it, then a person can get sucked into that trap.
Yeah, just one brief quotation, basically to exactly what Maulana Yusuf Sahab has echoed. There is a quotation in the Muqaddamah of Muslim Sharif also, that deen is an amana, it's a trust, فَانْظُرُوا عَمَّنْ تَأْخُذُونَ دِينَكُمْ. I mean, that summarizes this whole thing up. Deen is a trust and an amana, فَانْظُرُوا عَمَّنْ تَأْخُذُونَ دِينَكُمْ. So be very selective and be very conscious from whom you acquire your knowledge. So just to add on to the sentiments of Maulana, while you acquire the kitab, we're equally going to say sit at the feet of some scholar and learn the original, the traditional, the correct way, where it's a spiritual transmission, so that you are guided on areas that you could potentially slip and fall.
Just as the Appa was speaking and an email came in and flashed on the screen, that this documentary speaks of the evils of music, but the whole time has background music.
Maulana, just one point to add here, and this is also throwing another dimension to this here, is that often people argue that we need to read this and we need to view this to conscientize ourselves adequately to resist the temptation. But let's counter this argument with a very simple way. I mean, we have been told, and we don't have to wait for the era of the present, the emergence of Dajjal. Who doesn't know today that the era and the fitna of today is interest? Who doesn't know that the temptation of today is immorality? Who doesn't know that the temptation of today is nudity? On the grounds of sheer information, who's resisting the temptation? So this is yet another deception and delusion from the devil, that okay, you know what, innahu a'war wa inna rabbakum laysa bi'a'war, he's one eye, so when I see him, I say, hey, there's the Dajjal, let's run from him. Let me say, when I see the banker coming, I say, okay, here's the man with the interest, this is what my Nabi told me 1400 years, let me run from him. No, I don't run from him. I welcome him, I salute him, I acknowledge him, I sit him down, I give him the best form of entertainment in my office, conscious that he's going to propose before me a deal that the lifeline of which is interest. So we need to understand that we need deep-rooted faith and iman and conviction to save us, in addition to the information. But sheer information exclusively is not sufficient deterrent.
I suppose the point is we don't need to know every minute detail. We need to be satisfied with what has been mentioned in Quran and what has been mentioned in the Ahadith, and the little that the ulama have expounded in that regard, and leave ambiguous what Allah and His Nabi have left ambiguous.
That's the exact point, Maulana, I wanted to mention. And again, this is a viewpoint that we learn from our scholars. Abhimu ma abhamahullah. Any person familiar with tafsir will understand this is a common repeated phrase. So, you know, and you take, for example, the incident of Yusuf alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, the element of sensationalizing it is, it's an incident that is packed, jam-packed with guidance, with direction, with advice to people. But then a person will end and then say, but did Yusuf alayhi salam then wed Zulaykha? My brother, you have an entire chapter that has everything to do with guidance and so profound. And then you want to find out. Now Allah hasn't touched this, and the scholars say that Allah hasn't touched that aspects which are not connected to the guidance of man. And Allah has mentioned everything that is connected to the guidance of man. Again, you come in Surah Kahf, you speak about the youth and everything, and then comes to the aspect of sensationalizing it. Where did they live? Where did they die? Let's leave it after they entered the cave. What happened? To the point that Allah has discussed, and this is a repeated phrase by the scholars. And again, if we access the information of the scholars, we'll pick up Abhimu ma abhamahullah. What Allah has left ambiguous. I mean, the very famous hadith of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Inna Allah farada fara'idha fala tudayyi'uha wa hadda hududan fala ta'taduha wa sakata an ashya'a rahmatan lakum min ghayri nisyanin fala tabhathu anha. I mean, what does this hadith say? Inna Allah farada fara'id. Allah has ordained certain things. وَحَدَّ حُدُودًا, and Allah has stipulated parameters and boundaries. فَلَا تَعْتَدُوهَا, do not trespass and transcend those boundaries. And then to quote the hadith, وَسَكَتَ عَنْ أَشْيَاء, and Allah has been silent about certain things, مِنْ غَيْرِ نِسْيَانٍ, without forgetfulness, رَحْمَةً, as a mercy unto you. فَلَا تَبْحَثُوا عَنْهَا, do not probe the ambiguity of Allah. Do not probe what Allah has not explained.
As we move towards the conclusion, starting with Maulana Yusuf Abid Sahab, Maulana, there is a question that has come in from one of the listeners saying that, listen, I got the DVD, I gave it to a non-Muslim, they accepted Islam, but did I do the right thing? There are those who might be wondering out there that, you know, how do we approach this? If I did see it, what should my attitude be? At the end of the day, what is the message from this panel with regards to the Arrival series in terms of a yes or a no, or a do or a don't? Perhaps, you know, that could be the theme of the conclusion.
Our purpose of creation and existence in this world is not world domination. It is to secure our akhirah. And I think that's where the thrust of our efforts should be, not to be derailed and distracted by sensationalism. I'm not saying that some of the things that they have put in there are not happening in their worldview, but I think we've got a bigger picture, and our bigger picture is my obedience to my Allah and my adherence to His Quran and to the beloved Sunnah of the beloved Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In that is our salvation, and in that we will find comfort, in that we will find solace, and in that we will have the spiritual energy and the knowledge to dissipate and wave away from ourselves doubt and fitna. So this is my concluding remark as far as that is concerned.
Well, Ibrahim Sahab, what's the conclusion? What are we saying at the end of the day with regards to the Arrival series?
Yes, Maulana, there are many other aspects with regard to the whole aspect of conjecture. I think there are so many different aspects that come in, and some of the things that creates some sort of, you know, makes it interesting. Really, you start looking at things and you look at things that might be interesting, but you start wondering to what extent is this relevant, in what extent is it in terms of benefiting us. Like, for example, linking the UK flag to Firaun, and the concluding remark, you are still ruled by the same pharaonic type of tyrant. Now you all know brief for the American or United Kingdom government